All right, we'd like to call the meeting to order, reconvening this work meeting of the Provo Municipal Council as a joint meeting with Utah County Commissioners. It is 1:07. We're meeting in the City Conference Center on Tuesday, May 16th. This meeting is being broadcast live on YouTube, Provo City Council, where it will also be available for on-demand viewing. Please be aware that the microphones in the room pick up the noise of paper and other rustling objects. Further, be aware that the microphones can pick up side conversations. Excuse me. We'd like to welcome Utah County Commissioners Bill Lee, Nathan Ivey, and Britt Graves. We expect to be joining us shortly in the latter case. And we'd like to state that Councilmember Kim Santiago is excused today. The opening prayer will be provided by Councilmember David Harding.
Father in heaven, we are grateful to be gathered in a joint session with the County Commission. We are grateful for the blessings that we receive living in this great area. We are grateful for the community that we enjoy, for the great quality of life that is here. We're grateful for the efforts by so many that provide this. We are grateful for the heritage which we enjoy and for the sacrifices of those who have gone before us. We ask the Father for wisdom in the choices that we have to make and the discussions that are before us. We ask Thee to help us to have the right perspective and to that the best interests of the residents of this county and our city may be clear to us. We are grateful for all those who work so hard to enable our service, and ask Thee to bless all of the residents of this county. This is our prayer in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. We'd like to welcome Commissioner Graves, and thank you, Councilmember Harding, for that thoughtful prayer. I'm often grateful that we live in a city where our residents are supportive of us opening our meetings with prayer. We would now like to begin our discussion. Really excited about this opportunity to meet with our Utah County Commissioners. The Provo Council has been in habit of meeting with several others elected official bodies, including the Orem Council and the Board of Education, but I don't believe we've met with the commissioners, at least not in recent years anyway, I'm aware of, and so this is really something I'm looking forward to. Our hope is that these meetings will provide an opportunity for council and the mayor and to further develop our relationship with the county and the county commissioners, to talk about projects and priorities of mutual interest and ways that we can cooperate and help each other out. The way I look at it, I believe about something like 20% of the residents in the county are in Provo. Is that sound about right? Yeah. So I think
I know you collect 20% of the sales tax, so I hope you have 20% of the rest.
Okay, there we go. So I think about approximately 20% of the people that voted for you are the same people that voted for us, and about 20% of the people that are contributing taxes and fees toward all the services and programs that you oversee are contributing taxes and fees toward the programs that we oversee. And so we have a lot of common interests and a lot of opportunities to work together. So we thought that the way we would start is we're going to have the council, the mayor each take, or the administration, I'm not sure who's presenting on the administration side, just share a few of the priorities and things that we're working on. And we've asked Commissioner Lee to share, or whoever is designated on your end, to share a few of your priorities with the idea of looking for areas of mutual interest. So let's see, I think we have, do we have you up first, Mr. Strachan, on the council side?
We didn't, but I can certainly go through. Do you want to pull up our priorities? Bryce?
So County Commissioners, a couple of years ago, council started looking through some of the things that they're responsible for and decided to try and narrow down the list of, to some specific priorities. And what we're going to pull up here is show you 9 priorities that council has been working on, and just talk to them just very briefly and carry on. The first one, I think I can talk from the top of my head, it's actually near the bottom of the list, but it is the West Side planning. There's a desire by the council to program and figure out what they want to do with the development on the west side. Very recently, council has approved a set of policy guidelines that directs it. The intent there is to continue to allow some development, but at the same time preserve in whatever ways we can the agricultural base, especially for those that want to retain it. So we're in the process, that work has just been moved on to the Community Development Department, and they're going to start working on a Southwest area plan. So encompassing basically everything west of the freeway and south of Utah Lake down to the new Lakeview Parkway. Are you pulling up our slides here, Bryce?
What's that?
The policy statements, the 9 of them?
Do you know what it is?
So you can pull up on the website, just Google it. So another area that's important for council this year is to work on zoning compliance. We have issues around parking. We have issues around the population densities in the various houses. We have a lot of students that are now renting in the neighborhoods. It's become a challenge for our neighborhoods in terms of the makeup of them. We get more and more neighborhoods where the single families are becoming almost minorities in some neighborhoods because of the way that the housing has changed. So these council priorities, okay. So we've talked about a couple of these already. So public engagement, we'll start from the bottom then. Public engagement, the council wanted to.
Can we make them a copy of this to take with, so they don't have to write it?
Yes. Yes. We'll get one, as soon as I sit down, I'll get some printed up. So the public engagement, the city has just opened up a website called Open City Hall. And there we put questions out to the public and ask them for their input on a whole variety of questions. Currently we have questions or a space there for commentary on the 2018 budget proposals. I'm looking for comment on that. Do you want to scroll down a little bit? Okay. Structured policy. Cities trying. We haven't done a lot on this yet. I mean, we have in a non-concentrated way. But ultimately, what we want to do is make sure that our policies for the city make sense, both in terms of our ordinances. One of the areas that relates to is the general plan update. We're working on reviewing what's happened in the last 10 years and see what the status of the initiatives there are and how those relate to the Vision 2030 and upcoming Vision 2050 document. We want to support economic development. These two are actually backwards on here, but for housing, we're trying to figure out some of the affordable housing mixes and other issues. And then for budget priorities, We want the budget to reflect city goals, and the administration's been making some efforts in that regard to get us closer to that. So those are the 9, and then development approval process. We've got a committee we call DAPR, or Development Approval Process Review Committee. And we've been working at ways of streamlining the development approvals for the city and having them make more sense and become more easy for the developers to get their projects through. So those are just some of the 9 there. There's a lot that we could probably spend an hour on each one, but we won't. But those are the 9 goals that council has set.
I don't have a slide to show you, but I can go over and please other commissioners jump in as well.
Commissioner Lee, before we get to your
Sure.
side, can we have the mayor kind of
Absolutely.
talk about it?
I wanted to hear the county.
We can reverse that, sure.
No, I'm fine, either way.
Ours is 26 items.
I will burden you with that. Let me start with a project that we're very excited about and highly dependent on your generosity and your vision as well, and that's this regional sports park. And express our appreciation for your help with that. We're very excited about that. There, as you might imagine, are very few opportunities left in our city to develop something of this nature. And timing and everything seems to be coming together in a really nice way to make just a jewel of an asset, not just for us, but for the county as well. I'd also like to bring up the airport because I think that we've perhaps over the years been a little mistaken in not making this more of a county asset or resource, and we tend to talk about it as a city and as a city airport. But we're experiencing amazing growth out there, which is helping with economic development. And would love to invite the county commissioners and our fellow mayors to feel more ownership in that airport as that grows and develops. It's clearly much more of a county resource than just a public city resource. We just today presented to the city council a proposal for a redevelopment of the city center, which would be a new public safety facility in a new city center building. And I think you'll hear more about that dialogue in the upcoming months. We're by no means committed to move forward, but I think today we kind of committed to ask more questions and have a public dialogue about whether or not it's the right thing. We're in a building that's 40 years old, 40, 50 years old. Arguably wasn't built the right way 50 years ago, and we're paying for that. Our first responders are responding out of the building that would crumble in an earthquake. So those are all, I think, legitimate questions to have the dialogue with our public about moving forward. Economic development, you're, I think, pretty in tune with the number of things going on downtown, but let me share a few things, not so much in the downtown area that might be of interest to you. Our mall has new owners, and they're very different than the Woodburys up in Orem. The Woodburys are really good at a splash and announcements and hype and goodwill. And ours like to just stay in the background and then kind of surprise people. But they've got some plans that are not too different than what you're seeing up there at the Orem Mall. And they plan over the next few years to gradually reinvest in that mall to make it another great retail center for the valley. Likewise, we've had quite a bit of interest and have had over a number of years in the golf course. It's pretty tempting. It fronts the freeway and has an interchange right there, and we get constant requests to develop that. There's some discussion underway that would still leave the golf course, move a couple of holes and leave that area open for some economic development down there. And I actually expect that in the next few months you'll see some pretty serious movement down in that area with economic development. And finally, I share with you another project that we're pretty quiet about, but it's a big deal for us, and that's a total new software package for the city, top to bottom. We maybe like the county, I'm not sure, but we were surviving on years and years of separate programs built as needed. And they didn't talk, you're smiling, so you probably can relate to what I'm talking about. They didn't talk to each other. Some of them were dependent on employees that wrote those programs when they were here and had retired. They had no ability to maintain those, and you know, just this whole series of software. That's all being replaced with, as much as possible, one program that will run the whole city. And we'll talk to the different departments. When somebody calls up to see that their energy bill was higher than they thought, the operator will be able to look at that and see, oh, we noticed you had a pothole in front of your home. How's that doing? And not only that, but within the city, we'll be able to say, well, what's it cost to fill a pothole? And all these programs that didn't talk to each other, well, they'll talk to each other and tell us what it costs to fill a pothole instead of making that a manual thing. So we're deep into that. We've been into it for about, I say it's about 8 months, and we still have another a long haul to go through before it's fully initiated in the city. But that's actually been a pretty good deal for us.
Thank you, Mayor. You bet.
Okay, first off, thank you. This is great to be able to meet and talk and go forth. The mayor and I, a little while ago, how long's it been now? About a month?
Seems like forever.
Does it? I was thinking that too. No. But we were talking about some issues and how we could probably better understand not just each other, but the different entities. And so we've had the opportunity to meet for breakfast, except for this week.
Law enforcement, we got in the way of that.
Got in the way, but we've had the opportunity to meet for breakfast on Monday mornings, and that's been helpful. It's been helpful to kind of help keep things moving along. So I'm assuming from the items that we have on our I'll stay away from those and talk a little bit more about what some of the things the county is doing. Brideville Falls is high on our list, and we're in a process of trying to figure out exactly what to do there, which I'm sure will impact Provo greatly. And so we're looking at what some of the options are. We'd like to get input, public input, city input, all around the county, and we'll probably more than likely we'll go out to an RFP from some concessionaires to see what they would actually do too before we move forward on that. But that's one of the issues that I think directly people have interest in. We have our resource management plan that we're working on, pretty high on our list. It's done this year, should be done this year. That plan for us deals primarily with federal land, and we're going to be putting overlays over that on saying this is how Utah County feels the land should be managed or used, so that in the future, if travel plans come out or the federal government wants to do whatever, they will have to engage with us as a county on what can be done. Economic development, there's our county is looked at across the state as a model in a lot of ways, and we applaud the business owners and individuals who will take the initiative to go forward and do things. And I was out in Vernal, and one of the commissioners out there asked me, said, well, what's the success? And it made me think about what the success is in this county, or what has been the success. And the only thing that I could really tie it back to is that years ago, we used to kind of be a three-pony county: Geneva Steel, hospital, BYU. And if one of them, if Geneva Steel, or usually Geneva Steel, the way they went up and down kind of determined where we were going. We rode that roller coaster back and forth. And now we have a lot of diversity in our county that's going on. Sometimes when the economy's down, other businesses are up, and that kind of helps. And I think that's been really advantageous for us as a county. Agriculture is a big issue for us. We have a very unique county in that gross receipt wise, we've been number one in the way of agriculture receipts here in the state of Utah. And people just don't recognize that. They don't think Utah County has that kind of agriculture, but we do. We're number one in gross receipts when it comes to agricultural production. And so protecting that, seeing what we can do, also recognizing private property rights and how they play and flow as we look at models for transportation and growth in the county are very important to us, and we spend a lot of time there. As you're probably aware, we've picked up just recently this domestic violence
There's not really a lot that the county, does. It's a lot more on city levels, but nevertheless, we see a deficiency there. We're going through town hall meetings. We'll have one tonight, actually, that Commissioner Ivey is sponsoring. I sponsored one a little while ago here in Provo, and then Commissioner Graves will sponsor the next one, and just talking about that issue and what's happening there. I know you mentioned housing and low-income housing and how that's not. I've deemed it as a crisis to a certain extent. Spent some time down in St. George at a conference talking about the state and where the housing was, and I finally realized that as we go from different housing structures in the sense that where people are at top, the $1 million homes, and as they move down through the brackets, the low-income housing portion of it, the critical or the low income housing is really at a crisis. We do have just right above there, we do have adequate supply, but that bumping back and forth in this bottom end down here, they have nowhere to go. It's either the critically low income or on the street. That's an issue we're looking at. I know you have your housing authority here in Provo, and I think Provo does a fantastic job of trying to supply what they can when it comes to low-income housing. Maybe just on, you see the cranes over the historical courthouse. It's been sitting there for some time. We're working. We had a problem. Just wanted to let you know on that. There was a problem with the fascia on that back side. We assumed that once we took everything off, that we could just kind of attach it back on, but there was no structure to attach it. And so we've been going through a quite lengthy process, which has been painful for all of us to watch as we're trying to get things back in line. But I think it was today, wasn't it, that we agreed to that little agenda so that we can get that wrapped up and finished and not have that crane sitting there.
How was the attached floor?
Bubble gum and no, I'm not sure. I don't know. I mean, it would fall off, and so they were really concerned about that when they pulled it off and looked at it. They said, "I don't know how this has stayed on." So, those are some of the areas that we're working on in the county.
One other area you'll see an announcement coming out on is intergenerational poverty within the county. I've been co-chairing a committee working on intergenerational poverty. Towards June 3rd, we will have a plan actually out submitted for public, and then we'll begin working on how that looks at implementation to address intergenerational poverty within Utah County. This has been part of the Department of Workforce Services and Lieutenant Governor's initiative, and we've had a couple large meetings on that and a lot of buy-in from different municipalities and nonprofits, education that are all working on that particular issue.
Could you talk about the architectural? Oh, no, bring that one up.
We also have an architectural RFP that we went out to. County is currently, kind of like Mayor talked about, you guys have some old buildings, so do we. We have a public works facility that might crumble if Jamie Evans keeps going. And so we are going through an architectural RFP, analyzing all of the county's facilities across the county and figuring out what needs to be improved, where we can utilize better space or whatever that, whether it's all new buildings, who knows what we'll come up with, but we are currently doing that.
So we got a few things going on.
Sounds like it.
Thank you for sharing with us.
Another question about some of those things. How do we get involved in some of those things? I have several questions about things that you talked about, and how do we go about getting it? I think it's kind of like our positions here. We could spend hours on some of these things.
Right.
And it's the same thing that you've just presented to us. There's a lot of questions that I have, and how do we relate to that? The poverty, the housing. Our committees have been spending hours and hours on those housing issues. How is Provo City interfacing with you? Are you creating your own plan, or are we coordinating? I'm not sure how we're seeing a lot of coordination.
There is some coordination probably on some of these issues. I know for sure there's coordination. Which ones specifically?
Specifically housing and the homeless.
Yeah.
Are some of the issues that I see that we can participate in, but there are so many other cities that need to, if it's a county issue, somehow we gotta get together and play in the same sandbox about all these things.
I don't know that it's a county issue. I think it's a county issue because we're all in the same county, but as far as saying Utah County administration issue,
I think it is a county issue, and that's one of the things that I'd like to talk with you about. I don't think it's a city issue necessarily. I think it's something, if we look at it as a city issue, I think we're in trouble.
no, what I mean, I think is where the county can be the players. We have resources that can play with every city to come up with a plan for the county overall, but not the county taking the lead, more or less being a part with everybody. So for example, Sheriff Tracy, the LDS Church has been meeting with him for ever since we took that tour, it seems like, and I can't remember how long ago that was, 6 months ago or so, for housing particularly. And the LDS Church has a plan that they'd like to meet with, and they're doing with the sheriff, and so there will be a chance where they'll start reaching out to cities, especially Provo, because we know of the issue here. And so, but again, I don't know how much dealings you've had with the church or some of these partners. They want to stay very low key and very, very quiet at first, and so it's hard to really go out and broadcast some of those things.
And I understand that. I just,
And I wonder if Gary, there are issues that come up, which would be nice. I think this forum will lead to some of that dialogue possibly as we go forward. But going along that line right there, what a lot of people probably don't realize is that when people get out of jail, if there's no place for them to go, they bring them right to the county building and drop them off.
Which is in Provo.
Which is in Provo, and it's a problem. It's a problem, and there are groups out there that are trying to find a way to catch them and say, now you can't catch them and say, you will do this because now they're out of jail, right? But if you can get them in jail going through programs and then coming out of jail and saying, there's a little bit of help I need, because if you just drop them off, more than likely they're not gonna have the resources to do anything. And if we can kind of support a little bit to kind of get them going, that's something. I know some of these groups are even looking for, space in which they can start these programs. Those are kind of the things I think that we can coordinate and find ways so that we're not doing this merry-go-round back into jail, then coming back out, and then back into jail again, and it's just around and around. So I think this kind of form would help.
There is a Utah County Housing Consortium
Yes.
that deals with these issues using federal funding. And perhaps maybe we as council and as a committee need to know more about what they're doing, because they are using the funds that are allotted to the county and the city for the use of housing, including no cost, mostly low cost, but what about very low cost?
They get vouchers, and they're using the vouchers extensively. Provo knows that.
It might be good to have them make a report to us and tell us what they're doing as a consortium.
We've got a very good plan put together for those monies, and it brings in a lot of the players. And I had forgotten about it, and reading through it a few weeks ago, it was very good, and I think addresses some of these concerns. One thing that I found was interesting a couple of weeks ago, we had a presentation by some of the service providers, and I think they were saying that they have these vouchers, but only 30% of the vouchers are being used because people with vouchers can't find the physical places that will take them. So they finally qualified the vouchers, they get the vouchers, but they can't use them anymore. And then a quick thought with the intergenerational poverty, I think that's wonderful effort there. I imagine you know this, but if not, our Community Action Services has a pretty good program called Circles that they've.
Circles has actually been involved in all of our discussions.
Okay, good. I'm glad that makes sense.
In regards to that, I think that brings up the real lesson I would take away from that is facilitating that particular discussion is the need to bring together the various groups, because we tend to work in our own silos and become protectionists of our little pet projects. And the result, the greater community isn't enhanced to the degree of services that are out there because of lack of facilitation. In particular, in regard to housing, I would think that potentially maybe we would talk about this, but the idea just came, perhaps having a nice housing summit. The county commission, if we were to facilitate and put something together there to where we could invite some of these different groups, invite council members, mayors from the different municipalities to talk about the issues. And more so, hopefully you can get some new ideas on ways to solve it, but also just to bring a facilitation about the services, vouchers, and other things that are out there and available to individuals, so that you connect individuals and you build the networking for those type of things. You don't even have to create a new project a lot of times. It's just simply facilitating an area. We have a great convention center. If we did something like that.
They'd have to carpool though.
Yeah. So we'll talk about that later.
Well, I just saw it on the bullet point highlight for you.
I think something like that could be an interesting concept to explore, to where we can facilitate better connecting the various entities that are trying to be of service.
So I was out of the room for a minute. Did you happen to mention any of the contributions or involvement of the LDS Church and homeless, or even the jail inmates being released?
We did with housing, we did with homeless and IGP as well. So those are, it's a critical component of our community, and they play a large role. And so they obviously have a great.
They're actually willing to step up their game. They've been meeting behind closed doors, so there's some big announcements coming there.
Okay.
All right, thank you. So the next segment of our discussion, we invited commissioners to submit agenda items, and I think a number of these were submitted by Commissioner Ivey currently, but I'd like to turn the time over to Commissioner Lee to introduce and direct the discussion on these items that he brought to us.
Do you have a preference? You want to start off on one or the other?
I kind of got the proverbial ball rolling.
Keep it going. You want to take the first one?
Sure.
Yeah, parking.
You don't have to worry. I eat, sleep, and drink, and unfortunately these days. Parking has become probably the greatest priority for the commission. I also really enjoyed the mayor's state of the city, or city of the city address, I guess is how we say it. I don't know. Whatever. I was at Provo High School when you announced the parking thing, and so it gave me great hope. But the big concern is we have literally now lost more than our entire subsidy annually, our contribution to the Pete Sice Arena in annual business of hard dollars, not to mention economic impact annually, because we are losing people because of the parking situation. People who have been here for years, like WW Clyde, Geneva Rock, they are no longer booking with us, and they are going literally to Salt Lake or wherever. The problem is in the convention business, although I think we'd probably be able to get Mayor Clyde back, we don't know that we'll get some of these back. And the problem is if we don't address this now, which is why it's become the most important issue to us, what happens to convention center? It's a lot of the convention center and the sustainability of it to reduce the subsidy is on repeat business. Probably a half of it is repeat business, maybe even a little more. And so when you start losing that repeat business, it becomes a glaring issue for us. And so that's why it's now at the forefront. And forever, the commission, we always thought, or we were told, because none of us were a part of it, including the mayor, we were always told it's where the state court's house was going. And once that building came up, to say we panicked would be an understatement. There was great excitement in our room that day. So that's kind of where we're at with parking. It's a problem.
We recognize, I can
Yeah.
in there. We recognize that it's not just a Utah County asset, it is a Provo asset. We recognize that you value that as well in the city. And so the hope is, of course, that we can work through the issue and get to a point of comfort that we all agree to, not just for the immediate, but also for the long term. And that will give us, the best chances for things to go forward in a positive way. But that's
0
great.
to 100, where's your comfort level right now?
If her being good, our comfort level right now they're pretty close to around maybe 10%.
So it's serious.
Yeah, for us it's very serious.
So, I mean, To give an illustration, we get monthly updates with them. And one of the things they always share with us are the results of their surveys. In our last 2 survey results that we've received from the convention center, 75 to 80% of the respondents have all commented that parking is a problem, and as a result, they will not be returning. Last week, we received another major notification from a large convention that they would not be returning until the parking issue is resolved and if they return. So, I mean, that's the things that we're receiving from there on a monthly, weekly basis is the number one problem. You know, when I first started attending these meetings, you would hear complaints about maybe audio didn't work or, you know, my food was a little colder, just petty things, and there wasn't a consistent theme. And within the last 4.5 to 5 months that I've been here, that has shifted dramatically to a 75% negative ratio as parking is the issue.
And that's the ones they tell us about.
And those are the people that are responding.
Does that have to do with the construction, that whatever is there is not available, the little amount that was there was not available, or why the big shift over the last 4 months?
What little bit was there is no longer
It's no
available. So
longer available.
that's, and there's,
Even though it is available a block or 2 away.
well, that's where I think it gets debatable.
Then that's the question.
And that's the question. And I think it opens up into a greater question. Is 2 blocks away, 3 blocks away, a viable, sustainable system for a $50 million convention center? And most of the conventions I attend, the answer to that is no. We go there because we walk there, or there's, you know, you're in the parking lot and you're in the building, or you're in the hotel and in the building, and you're not commuting to convention.
Should be converted to a nice new city center though. So here's another, so we have site selectors that come out, they're not here, and so they don't get the opportunity like we do to, you know, say, well, you know, things are gonna change around, and this was gonna actually, you know, work out eventually. They come one time, and if they identify that it's a parking issue because the individuals out there who are bringing them to show them the convention center, one, they can't even drive and park next to the convention center to take them to show them the convention center, because there's no parking right there.
It's all owned by Bill.
So they have to park away and then walk. That's their first touch is, you guys don't have any place to park. And then we show them this beautiful building and what can be done. And then they walk away thinking, you've got a parking problem, and that's their perception. They could be gone for 10 years. And then they'll remember it as, well, I wonder if they've corrected that parking issue. And so that becomes a long-term problem for us. And on Danny, for Danny, who manages the conference center for us, you know, for him to say, well, right now we're parking here, but when you come next year, I don't know where you'll be, or it's on a management side, it's really tough for him because he can't say, when you're here in April of 2018, we've got this space, yeah, that's what the parking is. It's kind of up in the air and back and forth, and so there's no continuity for it. And that causes problems on the management side for him.
They look out to 18 months.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that you're working with the administration on these things, trying to reach some resolutions, and as council members, we've always seen, I enjoy being involved in the discussion and knowing where we're at, and I understand you're talking, and we're getting reports as a council.
And if I could just, you know, as I live fairly close to downtown, and I love downtown. It's kind of been a passion of mine for a while, and so I would pay attention to the conversation about downtown and how things are going, and for a while, you know, there was comments on Facebook groups like, you know, oh, hey, this just opened up, and there would be a comment, well, I never go downtown because the parking's so horrible. And there was kind of an effort to, and the message was, there's not a parking problem downtown. It's just a parking perception downtown. Parking's there, but no one knows how to to use it, or knows where it is to use. And you know, and hearing this and seeing some maps or whatever, you know, I would start telling people, like, when they would comment that, oh, well, actually, there's parking downtown. You just, you know, you have to know where it is or something. And after all of that, there were times that I would, most of the time I tried to walk downtown, but a few times we would drive or whatever. And we experienced it. And even knowing what I knew, I still had a really rough time with parking downtown. And so, you know, I understand somewhat what the concerns are here. I think that as a city, you know, there's different people involved in different ways, but I think as a city, we're recognizing that. We are actively hiring a parking administrator. That their full-time job is going to be figuring out how to make parking work. So I like Mr. Winterton, I'm glad that you're in conversations with the administration, and I am hopeful that we find a long-term solution that works for everyone. I believe that it's in the county interest, it's in the city interest that this convention center is successful, and I'm hopeful that will resolve itself.
The trouble is it's a hardly resolve itself.
Yeah.
Because it involves space.
Yeah.
In those places. I'd make a decision coming to the convention center based on parking, myself. Because of my age, and I'm really not able to walk through or walk or 2 blocks. Specifically. So it should be a tough thing to I think.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because so there's only been one time since I've been commissioner that I've gone to an event where we brought in the people, and I was a part of the group that helped them tour and answered questions. And when I alluded to Bill Bancroft owning all those spots, it was interesting when you walked out there. The one thing they noticed when we say perception is that the convention center does not even own 20% of the parking stalls, literally in the convention center loading area. So when we say, oh, well, there's plenty of parking, actually we can't even park our staff in our own parking lot. We are incapable of parking our kitchen staff for any event in our own parking lot. We do not own enough spaces. The city has given them through agreement to Bill Bancroft, and then yet we have to hope and see through the weeds. So when we say perception problem, yeah, it's also a perception problem, but it's a problem. When you can't park your own staff within a half a mile radius, you know.
You can buy Bill's business.
Yeah. I don't know if he'll even do that. Trust me, we've tried to get with him, and hopefully you guys have better luck than we do.
He's a good friend of mine.
He's a shrewd negotiator and a very smart man.
So I don't know if you've had anyone mention that there's problems with parking at the temple. But I hear that because my wife works there. And I hear some other things because I work for the church, but I'm concerned we have real and perceived problems for virtually any entity that's downtown, although New Skin probably, I don't know what their status is, they may have enough, but businesses, the temple, the convention center. Even today, I was a little late, so I had to park, you know, out in the Netherlands. Luckily, there was still a space available, but I just thought I'd mention that if you weren't aware that there may be some issues with temple parking.
And it's really our Monday through Friday business hour parking, because quite honestly, we know we have an overabundance for the weekends, because the county has 2 parking structures that, again, for the temple overflow, we don't stop them. You know, I mean, but it's our Monday through Friday, which in the convention business world, that's the money. That's the hotel nights. That's the economic impact to the city that we want. It's not these bridal shows that show up for 3 or 4 hours. You don't really actually make. In convention business, they're losers. They're not losers, but they're losers. Whereas these 3-4 day people where you get 150, 200 room nights, they generate a lot of money. So.
And I don't know the whole deal with the agreements and everything, but is the convention center as it was created, have we got enough parking for what we have created? And if we haven't, then what do we do? I guess that's what we're talking with the people about is how can we coordinate it together? And I look at the thing that we created, and I'm not sure that it was created for what we need. I mean, we have for what we need when we created it. So we have a problem. I agree. And it's just an interesting. We do need to negotiate and talk and come to some conclusions. There are other things, that this has come up. Other things we thought that hotel issues were a bigger issue at the time.
And hotels, I mean, not to neglect that, there's certainly, the more that we can coordinate our efforts and work together and bring hotels, you bring some businesses that can fill hotels Monday through Friday so that we can get more hotels in the area. That opens up the possibility for more conventions and greater economic impact. So there is a facilitation of a greater discussion there. We obviously have to stop the bleeding before you can start to save the life. And so what we hope is that we can stop the bleeding and then we can continue that coordinated effort to bring those type of entities into the downtown area to make sure that we fully realize the economic engine and the purpose of the center.
And I think from a commission standpoint, we appreciate the mayor and especially this year reaching out to us all the time and having weekly discussions with Commissioner Lee, because we have our weekly meeting and he does then meet and convey. So we do feel the good partnership, or at least the start of the good dialogue that we need. But again, unfortunately, it's something that we need to keep moving and probably move faster, which is hard for government, but we need to move as fast as we can.
I'm really grateful too that Commissioner Lee, that you're meeting regularly with the mayor, and he has my full support and finding a solution. And your success is our success, and if you have a problem, we have a problem. So let's get this figured out.
Want me to take the second one? Okay. The third one's yours. You know that. So as you're probably well aware, and I'm hoping to have a look at your agenda. If you have anything on your agenda tonight before we passed a resolution. So
It'll be an executive session. So
executive. Okay, sorry. Yeah, with the ice piece arena. Hopefully, to take a little bit of the heat off. You probably saw that. I think that'll be helpful if the council or the executive session, however that works, agrees to that. That would be, I think that will be helpful for one, taking the heat off, and then also allowing for further dialogue as we continue to go forward with that. I don't know too much of where to kind of tee it up. I think everyone probably knows what's happened there with the letters back and forth, and the county being able to look at this. We feel all kinds of different pressures that come from all over the county in different cities, and this was one that bubbled up to us that we needed to at least engage in a dialogue, in a conversation to see where we're at. And that was the intent of the letter. It was not the intent of the letter to throw it out there and say, hands up, we're done. It was to start a conversation. And so it did unfortunately get out into the public, and I think in a way that made it a little bit difficult for the conversation. But hopefully we can take that heat off and get back to some reasonable thoughts about where it is. And it's a great facility. We all know that. It's an asset to our county, to the city, and find a way for it to continue to go forward in a way that fits our model as a county, what we do best, and also for the city, what they do best.
And I haven't been part of this most recent round. We'll be talking about it later, so I don't know where it's been. I enjoyed the video that you produced. I learned a lot from it. I guess two things is, well,
Well, in the video, you mentioned that things have been misrepresented. And so, and again, I don't know where, it feels like I'm behind. I don't know what the latest is, but I guess if we feel like there is some misrepresentation going on, you know, I don't know if we want to discuss it out. The second thing is what just struck me is, you know, I heard how the city administration responded to the letter with some alarm. And then I was reading statements in the newspaper, and it did not mesh at all. I mean, there was quite a difference. And I usually assume that the truth is somewhere in the middle, and I thought, well, you know, the city probably overreacted and whatnot. But when our lawyers came in and explained, here's the contract, here are the clauses, this is the one that was invoked. What it seemed like is that the statements that I was reading didn't match with what the letter that was sent. And again, I feel like I'm kind of hesitant to even bring this up because maybe this is what's being resolved later on tonight, and maybe that's what the latest round is. But I guess I do want to make sure that we are on the same page, because at least after talking to our lawyers, maybe your lawyers have different opinion, but after talking to our lawyers, it seemed like there was a discrepancy between the statements that were being made and the clause that was invoked. So I'm glad we're talking. That's why I wanted to kind of take this opportunity to talk. Let's make sure that we at least understand each other, and we maybe disagree, but at least understand why we disagree. And maybe that will play out later today.
So can I dispel one notion? The one thing I had heard from people was that this was all about one issue. The action that the commission took, we have actually been very good, and all three of us, in looking at every issue completely separately. In no way was this ever to stick it to Provo for parking or any, and I'm so sick and tired of hearing that from people, because the mayor, we've had great conversations and that's never been a thing. The mayor, we have had open discussions as far as where the misrepresentation came through. We don't feel like it was the council or even the mayor, okay? So I'll let him address that. That's, I think, an internal matter for him for you guys to discuss. But for us, this is something we've talked about for a couple of years on how to always better manage and make sure we're stewards of the money. And it just was something that, you know, we get a lot of pressure. So it's funny, going back to housing or homelessness, for example. Every city wants what Provo has, except in homelessness, they won't share, right? Well, we get hit up all the time. And when they come in and they say, well, you're giving them how much money? Well, where's ours? Well, that's not exactly how it works, and it's not fair, because again, what that building represents and what it did is not the same, right? And for example, the sports complex that the mayor talked about, Provo City didn't seek him out. I sought him out, because our travel and tourism board sought that out for a better use of the county. To us, those are different conversations, and we've been very good as far as doing that. So we've never been like, oh, we've never felt like, at least no conversation have ever been had that, oh, we're with Provo City or any of this. We've always welcomed to talk. It's just, unfortunately, I think they all happened at the same time, more as circumstance rather than one, you know, leading to another.
So one thing that I don't know is, George and I have been around a long time and have gray hair, but we don't remember everything. And I wasn't around for the original discussions on building the ice rink. I mean, I'm sure we did it for the Olympics, but I would like to think that the discussion at that time also had a vision for the future of it after the Olympics and what role it would play, but maybe not.
And I wasn't there when I asked that question of those who were there. And they said, no, there really wasn't. And after the Olympics, how this was going to function and work, even to the point to where it took until last year to have that fifth amended, whatever, agreement to what it would look like to pull, you know, what it looked like to pull out. So there was never really a discussion, as I've been talking with those who've been there, that what that meant. Like it seemed like it was designed for a purpose, and to accomplish that purpose, and that was the focus. And everyone was jumping on board across the state, not just Utah County, but across the state to make sure that that actually happened, or the county was looking at the sense of how can we get a part of the action when the Olympics come so we can drive people down this way. And then the long-term effect of it was afterwards when they started talking back and forth.
Well, that being said, where we are today, it's interesting to see how many people around the county do what you add.
Sure.
And what it's become.
Well, and I think that's the credit that deserves to the turnaround that happened years ago was with part of the I-Sheet Authority is, I think Commissioner was right. I don't think there was a vision. I don't think there was a plan. There was a plan to say, okay, let's get through 2002. And then whatever the plan was, it failed because that building was not functioning like it is. But kudos to the management, the rec department, everybody who participated in it because it has become a fantastic facility. And, although we've sunk a lot of money into it, I think it's there to the point that it is now a great facility. And I think that's why it's time for that conversation to say, what is the plan? What is the plan for 10, 20, 30, what is the plan? And I think that's really where we're coming at saying, what is this plan? And,
I was there. The plan was to privatize it. Literally, there was no
we
plan.
don't mention that in our meetings anymore.
Well, but the plan really was, and you can see what happened after the Olympics.
Sure.
It was turned over to a private enterprise. It just did not do well with it. So that really was the idea. It wasn't really for the county and the city to jointly run it. That came about because of the failure of the private sector to run it properly, I think.
And we paid handsomely to, which we can't disclose, but anyway, to get out of that
Get out of
mess,
it.
to get out of that
It was a
management.
bad deal. The deal was made after I left office, but it did not turn out well.
Right.
But I think at the time it was done, it was a payback for our vote for supporting the Olympics.
Sure.
If Utah County had not voted for it, it would not have, we would not have voted for the Olympics. I can give you newspaper articles where we demanded an ice rink something because of what we had done. And I have a whole notebook full of articles showing what happened at that time. And it was payback for what support that we gave to the Olympic venue idea.
So my hope going forward, the past is the past, there's not a lot we can do about that now. So my hope going forward is that we can work to find comfort levels that will work. And everything's got to be on the table, and that's part of the problem when you send a letter like that. When I get a lot of emails from people that say, I want you to commit to this. I said, I can't commit to that until we go through the discussion. I can't commit to the end before we even get there. And so I think it's important for us to have everything on the table and say, what are the options? What can we do? What can't we do? I think the goal should be, how do we, allow this to go forward and not close, but to continue. That should be our ultimate goal. And how do we get there to where we all feel comfortable with our participation or our lack of participation, whatever it is. I think that should be the ultimate goal, and how we get there, just more conversation. I think this resolution that we passed, if you'll accept that as well, it will allow to take the emotion and the heat off and allow for more dialogue. I'm hoping that will come about.
Thank you. Well, I'm not sure what your time frame is. I think
We only have a 2, a 3, and a 4 o'clock meeting today, so
Okay.
and a 7.
We've reached the end of our budgeted time. Do you want to take any more time on these, or defer those last two for another occasion?
I can talk about, quickly, I'll happily talk about air quality. So, the first thing I make note of is that just as you are very concerned about air quality, it's one of our top priorities as a commission. As you're very much aware, we were just moved to serious non-attainment in Utah County. It's an interesting process how that all works out. Seems how our air quality is dramatically improving, but we're still not making everybody in EPA happy. It's an interesting process. Obviously, as a council and a body, you passed a resolution in support of diesel emissions testing. That was something we opposed as a commission. I'll quickly explain our reasoning behind that and some of our thought process into that, and then what we hope to do in addressing that particular issue moving forward. In 2006, the Utah County Commission decided to terminate the diesel emissions testing program, diesel emissions testing in Utah County. The reason that they did that was because from our health department and the people facilitating those tests, there was such an insignificant amount of vehicles failing versus the cost to the county and the taxpayers that they felt it was not justifiable to continue the program because it did not help improve air quality, but was a burdensome on the taxpayers and those particular things, given the small percentage of vehicles that were actually failing. Since that particular point in time, diesel emissions have vastly improved under federal regulation. Starting in 2008, all diesel vehicles have internal emission control systems that burn particulate matters to federal standards. If those internal control systems begin to fail or not function properly, there's a computer within inside of those light duty vehicles that shut those vehicles down to half power until the vehicles are serviced and perform and meet federal emission standards. So there's an internal check built onto the diesel emissions. One of the arguments against not testing them is fairness. Interestingly enough, those newer diesel model vehicles require an additive to keep them performing properly that costs the owner about $20 to $30 every 2,500 to 3,000 miles. So they are investing on a much more significant basis to keep their vehicles at federal emission standards. And so as a result, those vehicles are performing better and better, and that's part of why we're seeing air quality improve, not just in diesel vehicles, but in gas operating vehicles as well. Science and technology is the greatest driver to reducing those emissions. And then the great problem that we all share is people who modify, especially their diesel vehicles, to roll coal and such. One of the problems with testing diesel vehicles is those people can easily avert the system. You replace your chip with a clean burning chip. You go in, you pass your emissions, you come home, you swap out your chip, and voila, you're back rolling coal and polluting however much you want. So in an attempt to catch the bad guy, so to speak, all we've really done is punish people who are trying to take good care of their vehicles and comply with emission standards, while the bad guys continue to avert the system and get away. We also learned from the Volkswagen's particular scandal, if you will, that the testing doesn't catch manufacturers who are actually altering their vehicles. That Volkswagen discovery would have never been made had it not been for scientists investigating the internal operations of those vehicles. Those vehicles were passing emissions all over the United States where emissions are required. So it didn't even help in that particular instance. As a result of those type of things, as a commission, we felt this was an increased burden or regulation onto the citizens that actually doesn't produce any results in actually improving air quality. One of the things we've had internal discussions about and that we're working on with our public health and sheriff's department is the possibility of like an emissions officer. This would be an individual who would, upon seeing individuals who have modified their vehicles, they're rolling coal, or have obvious tailpipe emission problems, and this can be heavy duty, light duty, any type of vehicle, they would be able to cite those vehicles for not following the law, right? And so we're looking at ways that we can enhance enforcement of existing law through a mechanism like that to make sure that we're getting those bad players who are deliberately polluting our air. As a side note on emissions, something to keep in mind, I think the state of Washington is a state and a culture that we could all cite as an area that is very aggressive in their environmental policies. They've actually phased out emissions testings of all vehicles, citing the same statistics that newer vehicles actually improve air quality much better than testing. And as a result, we can save taxpayers a lot of money. That money is then reinvested in the economy. And the more things we can do to bring newer vehicles into the fleet of cars on our roads will do more than anything we can possibly test or imagine for to improve our air quality. And so as a commission, we want to try and focus on those innovative ways to bring newer fleets. One of the things Commissioner Lee had met with an individual about was, and I'm going to work with the Volkswagen board that's dispersing the funds from that settlement, is the potential of fleet leasing for like public work vehicles. so that our public work vehicles are actually newer and running at cleaner emission standards than if we take a lump sum of money and buy it and then have to try and keep it up and running for the next 20 years to get the wear out of it. Does that economically make sense to look at the way we're modeling our fleet vehicles differently to make sure as a government entity, we're putting vehicles on the road that are actually helping improve our air quality? And is there avenues and ways not only to save taxpayer dollars, but in the process to bring that down? We're also supportive of the new CPAN type of initiatives that are going to help with, industrial pollution from our buildings and stuff like that. We're strong proponents of Tier 3 gasoline. I'm a strong proponent of continued use of diesel, winter blend diesel fuel, which again, all of those mechanisms do significant amount to improve our air quality. And then I think part of our role and responsibility as elected officials in regards to air quality is to make sure we're not always just saying, you can't do this, but what are we doing to encourage science and innovation to find ways to make things better? Because that tends to have a whole lot better effect than slapping people on the hands or saying you can or can't do this particular activity. You can't use your barbecue grill. How can we find ways to use science and understanding how particulate matter forms? Is there a way to reverse the formation of particulate matter? And is there a way to improve efficiency of those inherent activities that do produce particulate matter that cause our air quality problems, and focus our efforts and energies around those type of innovative solutions?
Mr. Chair, before you close, I don't know if you're going to get ready to close this, but this is the type of discussions that we need to have more often. And I feel sad that we have not done this in the past. Some of these things, as we passed that resolution, I would have liked to have studied more in depth. And I think as a council, we do that. We have our work sessions. We start at noon and we go until 5:30 every other Tuesday, and we meet each other up. And I think it's time that we start doing that also in the county level as we talk to each other. This has been very helpful, and I have several more things on this list that aren't on this list that I'd love to just get in and hear what you're feeling. This makes a huge difference for me, and I think it's something we've been lacking in the last while.
You'd love to do it. Yeah. Mr. Green?
One last thing is, if you have something that is going to be a public discussion or a work meeting and you would want us to come because you think we would really be interested, love to have that invitation and another meeting to go to.
It's worth it. In this one, it's worth it.
We'll make sure you're all at American Fork City Hall, 7 o'clock tonight for domestic violence. If you haven't already received the invitation.
If he'll give us a council meeting, I'll go.
So, no pressure. No pressure.
7 o'clock. I don't think there's any chance tonight. Let me just thank you, Mr. Ivy, for your passion and your explanation of those air quality issues. I agree with almost everything you said. I'd love to agree to disagree on the effectiveness of diesel emission testing, but that's fine,
Just argue with the EPA over that one, because they agree with me.
So, is there anything else that you'd like to cover?
No, thank you. I agree. The more communication for a better understanding. If we can do this on a regular basis, it's helpful.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Going to meetings with Mills is not the problem of a commissioner.
So if there's no objection, then I guess, Mr. Jones, we're adjourning this meeting. We'll declare this meeting adjourned by unanimous consent, and then we'll reconvene in 5 minutes to continue our work session.
Thank you. I wanted to put something on the record, how Gary Kohler is the best manager and boss I've ever had when I worked for Provo City. Because I know he'd be so mad.